I've played tons of games, and one thing I've learned by playing tons of these games is just how important the marketing of video games can be, from commercials to the box arts that we see on the shelf. For many of us, that first impression was a big part of our choice in what games we would buy or what games our parents would buy for us. In the previous box art episode, I covered the top 10 best looking Mega Drive box arts, and you already know if I make a best of, there's a pretty solid chance that the worst of is right around the corner, so that's the topic of today's episode. 10 Mega Drive box arts that to me really didn't make the cut. Let's begin. Beat 'em ups are always fun, right? Right? No, they aren't. In fact, there's some beat 'em ups out there that I don't want to remember, such as Two Crude Dudes, a game that exudes the energy of a 12-year-old with a pencil writing a plot that he thinks works after freebasing creatine. This game actually is a sequel. You might recall Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja, the game where two random chuckle fucks chase the Dragon Ninja through New York City with the whole intention of rescuing President Ronald Reagan and eating cheeseburgers with him. You think I'm lying, but that's the ending to that game. The sequel was known as Two Crude in the arcades, but on the home consoles, it was known as Two Crude Dudes, and it features the same blockhead goonfuck gym bros that eat, scream, and shit the 90s machismo aesthetic. It's dumb, and I think the developers knew it was dumb and really leaned into the absurdity so that this game could obtain cult status. Now, the box art for this in America, it isn't that bad. I actually kind of like it. It has a graffiti on the wall, it kind of stands out. But the PAL version is well, you can see for yourself. Nothing like seeing two roided out goofballs taking a glamour shot. Really sells the game for me. Throughout history, game developers have taken the foundation of previous games and created their own spin on it. There are tons of Pang clones, Pong clones, Pac-Man clones, but Zoom on the Genesis is actually an Amidar clone. Some of you might remember Amidar, a very early Konami arcade game where you would run over the borders of a rectangle to color them in, chalk to the brim with whatever bullshit enemies they could reasonably program in 1982, which if you're curious, are paintbrushes, pigs, gorillas, and tribesmen. Zoom itself was created by Discovery Software International and it was released worldwide. Seems pretty tame, right? Yeah! Until you realize the main character is a zoomer, a fucking egg with humanoid features, gremlin ears, a tail, and some sweet-ass kicks. And in case you don't believe me, you can see his dumb ass on the PAL box art, which is the same as the US release. Skid marks. To some, it's a mark on the road. To others, it's the result of not wiping your ass good enough. But what are super skid marks? That's a game, specifically a sequel to Skid Marks on the Amiga. This is a racing game through and through, presented in the diagonal down perspective, which has historically annoyed the fuck out of me, and no, I don't look forward to it. Games like this disappoint me. I'm talking about being pegged by some Amazonian lady named Karma while crying into a sock full of Hot Pockets level of disappointment. There are some cool vehicles though. You can drive a 4x4, a bug, a Grand Prix car, and a cow. Yeah, a cow, which is exactly what they put on the cover of this game. Fair reminder though, this game was only released for the Mega Drive and only in PAL regions. Yellow cow. Once upon a time, there was this game called Soccer Kid, and it was made by Chrysalis, and it was a pretty big deal for people who owned the Amiga CD32, being rated the number 10 best game on the system, which is great considering there are only 10 good games on the system. It had a unique aspect though. It was a side-scrolling action game where we played some kid that used a soccer ball to hit his enemies. Other companies liked this idea and made games that involved using a soccer ball. Off the top of my head, Hurricanes is the one on Super Nintendo, but on the Genesis, it was Marco, which was suspiciously similar to Soccer Kid. This game was actually developed by the Cartoon Mavericks, who are known for, this. This is their only game, and that's likely because they were created as an internal studio for Domark. The box art is what concerns me though. We have a kid that, he's got a condition. He has conjoined eyeballs, 4 fingers, and apparently no teeth. I understand the whole cartoon aspect, but there is nothing settling nor normal about the situation this child is in. Quite stupid. Oh hey, look, low-budget Jesse Ventura is back. This is one that we talked about during the Sega Master System episode. For anyone who doesn't know what Dynamite Duke is, it's basically Seibu Kaihatsu's take on Cabal, the original being made by Tad and mostly published by Taito. And for anyone who's like, who's Seibu Kaihatsu? Well, you've likely heard of them, but you never cared to look into them as a company. The big franchise that they created was Raiden, the shooter. Yeah. Dynamite Duke, though, it's a pretty fun game. The arcade version has 9 stages, but the Genesis and the Mega Drive version only has 6 stages, so it's one of those games that you can pick up and beat pretty quickly. And much like the Sega Master System version's box art, we have this absolute goofball on the front cover, the embodiment of a guy who just won a bar fight over who gets the last Slim Jim, you know? Just so out of place that it's stupid. Corporation is a big deal, and I say that because it was one of the first games to properly use lighting as a stealth dynamic. That's pretty important. It would go on to inspire other games like System Shock, Deus Ex, and in some ways, Thief. Now, some of you might be like, that's CyberCop! Yeah, it is. A game that originated for home computers of the era and somehow, by the grace of God's holy name, was ported to the Genesis. It was the only home console port the game received, which is probably for the best. I can count on one hand how many Amiga games that were ported to home consoles actually are tolerable to me. In most cases, the control schemes are so nuked that they aren't fun, but that's just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Now, the US version of this box art is pretty cool. You see the Cybercop standing there, and he has the same rectangles that he has on the heads-up display in the game, so nice little reference there. But in Europe, where this game is known as Corporation, we have a big green monster. You ever called your grandparents on FaceTime and they open up the camera and all you see is their forehead? That's the aesthetic that they decided to go for with this one. Well, we got ourselves a repeat offender here, Bonanza Bros. Much like the Sega Master System version, we see these two very strange looking robots on the front cover. Now, I do want to say I made a little oopsie poopsie in the previous episode. I don't believe I mentioned that the two characters we play as are robots, Robo and Mobo specifically. But I knew the characters as Mike and Spike when I played it, so I don't know what version I played, and maybe you all can tell me in the comments section below. You would know better than I would. I just really don't like the weird aesthetic of the robots. They look like trash cans, and if that's what they were meant to look like, then bully for them. But if I was a kid and looking at the shelf for games to buy, I would glance right over this one. How fucking dare you? How fucking dare you, you insufferable, self-congratulatory, dim-witted, over-caffeinated, undercooked, tragically oblivious, emotionally dehydrated, grammatically reckless, smug-faced parody of confidence. How dare you even for a minute talk bad about Streets of Rage 2? Look, I endorse Streets of Rage 2. To me, there hasn't been a beat-em-up that comes remotely close to accomplishing what Yuzo Koshiro did musically and what Hiroshi Momota did programming-wise. Trust me, I love it. This is a top 5 game for me on the Genesis, period. Maybe even the top 3. But remember, this episode is about box art, so we can take everything relevant about the game and just chuck it out the window. In the US, the box art for this was wonderful. We see the characters getting into a knockdown dragout in the streets, no more no less. It really gets the point across. But what was going on in Japan? Well, for starters, this game wasn't called Streets of Rage 2, it was known as Bare Knuckle 2. This is a very different aesthetic. But to me, all of the characters look stupid. It's like a failed boy band poster and every character is out of touch with what year it is. What's going on back there? I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be Mr. X, but he looks like that weird uncle that comes to the family reunion telling your daughter, "Oh wow, you really grew into your bra, didn't you, kiddo?" Fucking weirdo. It looks like he's going through a colonoscopy halfway through his villain monologue. It just really doesn't look good. Do you like Paperboy? I've never really gotten into it. I think it's because I don't know how to play it. I know the whole idea is to deliver papers to the people who subscribe and commit acts of vandalism for people who don't, thus brute forcing them into paying for your shitty paper, but I never really got into it. And by the time I knew what Paperboy was, I had played the shitty Nintendo 64 version that I would very much like to forget ever existed. But this was a huge deal from Atari. As a mid-80s game from them, this one did stick, and it got ported to literally anything that could run it. You know how people run Doom on literally everything? It could probably be argued that Paperboy could get the same treatment. Now, all versions of this game have a really concerning box art. And before we get to it, let's take a look at the arcade poster. Okay, it's just a kid throwing papers. Looks normal. How could they possibly fuck it up? The answer? Royally. Who in their right mind designed this poor child's face? It's like some homeless prophet barged into Atari headquarters and said, "In 30 years there will be a boy, nay, a man, with achondroplasia. He will be the one to carry a broadcast television show known as the Game of Thrones. His name, the Dinklage of the Peter." Oh hey, a hot B game, hell yeah. I didn't realize they published a beat 'em up. Learned something new today. Originally, this was an arcade game. It was developed by Kaneko Co. and published by Taito, and if you've played this, you'll notice it's very much an offshoot of Pit Fighter. But to be honest, it's eons better than Pit Fighter, and between me and you, anyone who tries can be better than Pit Fighter. But this is very much a throwaway, funny little game, right? We take on gang members, knock them out a few times, move on to the next stage. If I recall, you take on an entire biker game, and for what it is, it's not good, but it's equally not that bad. But then it got ported to the Genesis where it maintained the same energy. The US box has a fist coming out of the ground. Why? Because it was known as Kageki, Fist of Steel, in the US region. In Japan, where this one was on the Mega Drive, it was only known as Kageki, which I have no fucking clue what that means. Kageki, together one word, means radical, but there's hyphens there, and I doubt it means each word does its own thing. Otherwise, this game would be called Mosquito, Under, Air. Which, now that I think about it, I guess it could make sense. The box art, though, oh boy! We have some of the most goofest dingleberries out there that could be manifested. Everyone in this town has a severe overbite, and we see our guy on the right punching the shit out of some overweight goon. Then they zoom in. Sports games were important, baseball games equally as important. Baseball games were very important to Japan, where baseball takes a very different cultural relevance than we see here in the United States. I'm talking about synchronized dances, really hot cheerleaders, mascots that can change expressions due to stickers that double as their facial hair. Yeah, that was exciting. So naturally, baseball games were a big deal in Japan as well. Konami had Power Pro, Namco had Pro Yaku Stadium, and Sega had Chokyukai Miracle 9. It's an arcade baseball game at its core, but one of the really weird things about it is that the characters are made out of balls, literally. Not like balls 3D balls, but balls nonetheless. These orange little peanut things, and that's reflected on the box art. This was only released in Japan, which makes sense because it was licensed and included only the Japanese Baseball League's team. So yeah, if you're into that, I think you'd enjoy it, but to me, the box is just stupid. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? Are there any games that come to mind when you think of horrible Mega Drive box arts? Feel free to let the community know down below. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home with us. We're a gathering of people dedicated to preserving gaming memories and remembering a time when life was just a little bit easier to live. And if you're into that, feel free to subscribe. Finally, the single most important thing you can do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.